don't know how clearly you're going to be able to see this, but this whiskey is very, very hazy. And there's a really good reason for that, because this is one of the entry-level products from the English Whisky Company, which means that it's a 43% ABV product, but despite that, it's still non-chill filtered. I thought all of the Scottish distilleries, they claimed that chill filtration was a requirement of low-strength whiskies, and that people won't buy whiskey if it's cloudy. But people are buying this, and they don't seem to mind. Did they lie to us? Welcome back, Dram fans. So, I'm going to tell you a little story. I went to my local whisky distillery, which is the English Whisky Company in Rydham, Norfolk, and because I am their best customer by a mile, they actually didn't have anything that I wanted to buy that I didn't already have. So I thought, I'll take my £85 that I was going to spend on a single cask strength release, because that's the going rate that they charge for such things. And I thought I could buy a bottle of each of the standard entry-level offerings instead, and I could bring it to you guys and I could review it and tell you what I think, because I'm good like that. So here we are. We've got the two, I suppose there's more than two now, but the two main entry-level bottlings from the English Whisky Company. You've got the original, which is the unpeated stuff, and you've got the smoky, which obviously is the smoky one. They're both 43%, they are both no age statement whiskies, they both sell for just under £50. So today I'm going to be looking at the unpeated one, the English Whisky Distillery Original. And before I get to that, just something that always niggles me on this. Is it just me, or have they got the colours the wrong way around? This is the original, this is the smoky. Smoky should be the dark one, right? I think so. Whenever I've had these like on my coffee table for quite a while, and every time I think I'll have a smoky one today, and I go for the dark one, and I think, oh wait, it's the other one. Obviously doesn't matter at all, but my mind just always associates the darker colour with a peated dram. Is that crazy? Anyway, completely besides the point. Today we are looking at the unpeated dram, 43% as I said. Disappointingly, they no longer state natural colour and non-chill filtered on the label, despite my praise in the intro of this video, where I'm saying that it's fantastic that even with an entry-level low-strength whiskey, they're still allowing it to be natural, even though it gives it an appearance which Scottish distilleries swear means that people don't buy it anymore. I don't know where they've got this idea in their head that the cloudiness or the clarity of a whiskey is the primary thing that whiskey consumers are interested in. I really can't see as that anyone that's going to tip it into a mixer cares, but chill filtration certainly does have a negative impact on flavour, so I'm very pleased to see that this is at least unofficially non-chill filtered. Also, and I don't know why this keeps happening, but that's how the cork came out of the bottle the second time I opened this bottle. And I really do not know why this keeps happening, but this has happened to me so many times lately, to the point where I think I'm averaging a problem with a cork, either a snapped cork or cork taint, in about probably 1 in 6 bottles that I'm opening in the last year or so. So I have been very, very unlucky lately. This is the end of the cork that I actually managed to extract. But yeah, definitely time that either someone in Scotland or England took some inspiration from the rum world, or the gin world, or the Japanese whiskey world, and came up with a proper screw top enclosure or a synthetic cork, because this is not good enough. And it's not a specific criticism of the English Whisky Company, because I'm having these problems with corks with scotch and rum and various things. We just need something better than a piece of dead tree. Back to the whiskey though. I love how hazy this is. I'm going to tip it up. Hopefully you'll be able to see that on camera. But you have to take my word for it that it is very, very cloudy, and there's lots of little bits of detritus in there, possibly some of them at the end of my cork. But that is a very cloudy whisky, a very naturally produced whisky, despite being an entry-level product. It's also very interesting that the unpeated whisky seems to be more hazy than the peated whisky, possibly because the unpeated malt is going to be floor malted malt from crisps in Fakenham, whereas the peated stuff is using, and I have this on good information from the tour guide from last time I was there, the peated dram uses Isla peat, so that's possibly an explanation for why the unpeated dram does appear to be a little bit more hazy, possibly a little bit more oils and the good stuff left over in there from the floor malted English malt compared to the more commercially produced Isla peated malt. So the unpeated entry-level product from the English Whisky Company is 43%. It's going to cost you around £47. I think I paid £47.50 for this bottle, which is kind of expensive for a 43% no-age statement whisky. Although saying that, it's probably on par with some of the Flora and Fauna releases these days. But in defence of the English Whisky Company, you do get a very well-made whisky for your money. If anyone out there is interested, if you have your own bottle at home, the bottle code on my specific bottle is L00823. We're told that this whisky is matured in bourbon casks, and I'm very pleased that this one doesn't sink to the lows of using STR or wine casks as a crutch to cover up youth. This is a straightforward, properly made English whisky. So let's get some in the glass and see what we've got. Not much of a pop from the cork there. There's possibly a good reason for that. Still works though, to be fair. It still forms a seal. Yep. English Whisky Company original on the nose. Quite a sharp fruitiness on the nose. Sharp fruitiness, lemon, grapefruit, citrus, as well as quite a rich fruity maltiness. Very, very malt driven, but a very bright and fruity maltiness. Quite tropical, quite citric, sharp, slightly sour. Tangerine, tropical fruit, but also with a dry, mealy cereal and strong barley sugar note. There is sweetness to be had in there as well though, a little bit of sweet honey on the nose. Slightly creamy and lactic, kind of like tin peaches in cream, but really all about that fresh, sharp and fruity maltiness on the nose. So in my opinion, it is a youthful and straightforward, slightly basic, unpeated malt, but it's one that shows a quality and care to attention and the details. It's a very well made, young, approachable and affordable single malt whisky. Let's see how it tastes. You can actually see, or I think you can see, the haze in that, just in that small quantity in the glass, and I'd be astounded to hear that they were adding any colouring to this. Certainly appears to be a beautiful natural colour though. I love to see a whisky that is this pale. You don't see many whiskies at all which are quite this pale, but you just know that no crap has been added. It's not been polluted with deceptive colouring. When you see a whisky like this, you know that it's almost certainly natural. On the palate, a little bit more dry than what you would possibly expect from the nose. Dry, slightly mealy barley quality, slightly salty, a little bit of salinity on the early arrival, as well as a little bit of a mineral malty quality. I think slightly youthful. You can tell that this is probably around about a 5-year-old whisky perhaps. It has a hint of youth to it, but really only a little. A little bit of an orange wine gum note, orange and lemon, a growing fruity maltiness, tangerine, peaches, as well as quite a bit of grapefruit. There's a really nice, grippy astringency to the palate of this whiskey. As for the finish, let's have one more sip. Jelly sweets and sharp, astringent grapefruit and lemon. Quite malty, quite oaky, very fruity, and very, very robust for a 43% whiskey. I think a lot of people would mistake this for 45 or 46. All in all, I'd say it's a simple but full, fruity and pleasant young whiskey. A really, really good entry-level bottle. Really wonderful, sharp fruitiness, especially on the palate. The only real fault with this, I would say, is the slight youth on the palate, but I think that it performs very well at the lower strength, and is pretty much on par with probably the majority of 10-year-old Scotch whiskies that you can buy. I think that it also gives the latest batch of the English Whisky Company 11-year-old a damn good run for its money as well. The thing that this really reminds me of, and I'm really glad that it does, is that it kind of seems like a lighter, younger version of the triple distilled from the English Whisky Company. So I think if you like the triple distilled from English Whisky Company, or bourbon matured triple distilled whiskey in general, then this is one that you would probably enjoy. I think a really interesting comparison with this one though, bearing in mind that it is an entry level whiskey sitting in the £40 range, would be the Bruichladdich Classic Laddie. I think because this is only 43% as opposed to the 50% we get from Bruichladdich, it's not as intense, but I think that it's a fair bit more mature and a lot more balanced. I feel like this is probably very close to what you would get from Classic Laddie if they stopped messing around with the wine casks. And in particular, if you had a Classic Laddie, you took the wine casks away and maybe used a higher percentage of refill casks, I think this is the kind of thing that you would get with a stronger emphasis on the malt and the distillate, without even the distraction of fresh bourbon casks. It's really all about the barley, all about the malt in this one. So I think this is a really good recommendation for anyone that really likes the Classic Laddie, as well as things like the Bruichladdich Isla Barley. This is not that far away from that, as well as other young bourbon matured whiskies like Deanston 12, the various Singleton releases. Altmore is pretty close to an Altmore 12. Maybe even things like the fresh and fruity space ciders like a Glenfiddich, or maybe a Kingsbarns and a Linkwood, similar ballpark. I think the only real problem that stops me from really highly recommending this would be the price. Even though it's a very pleasant whiskey, I think that price of £47, nearly £50, is a little bit high for a 43%er. And in my opinion, if you're looking at English whiskey, and if you're watching this review, you're probably at least curious, I would say that for the small increase in price, you're probably better off looking at one of the small batch releases instead. Because at the end of the day, they're probably only an extra £10-15 above this. You get probably a much smaller batch than this, and you just get a more craft presented whiskey. And honestly, I think that obviously the cost treatment depends on personal preference, but I think that the average small batch whiskey is a noticeable step up from this. A really pleasant and enjoyable whiskey though, and a really great introduction to English whiskey. And I think it's obviously where they're aiming at with this. This is something it's the most affordable option, especially if you buy it in a smaller bottle, which is available to people who are curious about whiskey from the English Whisky Company. It's going to be a lot of people's first experience, and I think it paints the distillery in a really good light. It's not going to win any awards, it's not going to blow anyone away, but it gives you a good idea of what they could do with some of the more premium options if you decide to go for them. And for an entry-level whiskey, really, what more can you ask? So thanks for watching. Let me know what you think about this one if you've had it, and what are your thoughts on entry-level whiskies, because it's actually a deceptively complicated thing to make something affordable and economical and in large batches that paints the distillery in a good light and shows the house style without scaring anyone away with price or challenging flavours? You think about it, it must be harder than it seems. I think that with this one, they've done a fairly good job, even coming from a cynical malt head like me. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, and cheers.